NFL Super Bowl week, Miami, South Florida. This is so cool. Radio Row, Media Row I like to call it. There's just so much going on. And look who I run into. This is a treat for me. I believe it's the first time I've ever got a chance to talk to Chris Nowinski, Harvard grad, WWE alum, doing so much with the brain and concussion research and things like that. Chris, tell us about what you got going on and the reason to be here in South Florida Super Bowl week.
So I've been coming here every year for the last decade because what we study is chronic traumatic encephalopathy in the NFL, and we've been advocating for better concussion care. And I was just actually doing an interview where we were remarking on how much things have changed in the last 10 years. It was 10 years ago that I was advocating for we need to have concussion protocols in the NFL, we need to start studying brains, understanding what CTE is, and now a decade later, concussions are taken care of. And now we're nearing 300 NFL brains. We're learning a lot about what's happening with these former players.
What was it like for you when you first started this and this journey? Because back then it really wasn't talked about much or anything like that. What made you decide to go that route and the importance of it?
So it started with my concussion, right? So I had a concussion in WWE in 2003 that I didn't realize was a concussion. And so I kept performing, I kept wrestling, and eventually I developed post-concussion syndrome and could not get better. And so I'm still 17 years later almost, and I still have headaches, I still don't sleep normally. Like it's interesting how much these things can link here. And so it was the fact that I was so ignorant about concussions that got me interested in figuring out what was really going on with my brain and realizing that we were all handling concussions wrong around the world in all sports 15 years ago. And that could easily be fixed, and that's what we've done. But it is interesting that when I came here at the beginning, people did not want to talk to me. I was not welcome, and now it's like a reunion every year. People always pull me aside and thank me for what we've accomplished in making this sport safer and all sports safer. Because you shouldn't have to trade your brain for anything. Your brain is who you are.
When you mention all sports too,
yeah.
So if we're talking whether it's pro wrestling, boxing, MMA, football. We're talking sports across the board.
Right. Yeah, and that's also interesting here because it's not just football players at Radio Row, right? There's MMA guys here, ran into some WWE buddies. And the reality is, we've all been, for generations now, very risky with our brain because we didn't really appreciate that you could develop a degenerative brain disease if you get hit in the head thousands of times. And so, football and boxing, I think, is where it's worse, and that's where our evidence is. But we've discovered basically CT and ice hockey and soccer and rugby and all these other sports, baseball, where you didn't necessarily think it could be there. And we're really digging in on military veterans. We know that this is a huge issue for veterans. And so we started a program called Project Enlist to get more veterans to donate so we can find them answers, because we weren't working on this disease when we started. We had the first CTE research center in the world in 2008. We have a lot of work to do before we can tell somebody we can fix this with a pill. And so we're really focused on getting there, but also preventing this. And that means it starts with not hitting our children in the head anymore. That's the most important thing we can do, is stop letting your kids get hit in the head hundreds of times. It's not appropriate in any circumstance, whether you're hitting them yourself, which is abuse, or you're letting somebody else hit them.
What's it been like too working with WWE away from as a WWE superstar and doing this?
That's actually what's sometimes most rewarding, is how professional wrestling, and especially the WWE, has responded to this work. Because when I was there, we didn't have a protocol. I wasn't educated, and that's sort of what led to my issues. And since then, they've really welcomed me in and actually do annual trainings for the talent to tell them what I've learned and what we've learned about concussions and long-term effects, and also give them my thoughts as to how you could do this safer and how you could do this better. And we talk about things like risk management, and we talk about what concussions might look like so you can recognize it in the ring and stop a match. Because one of the more interesting things about pro wrestling is that it's probably the best place to learn what a concussion might look like, because every time you're selling, every time you're getting punched and you're going, oh, and you're wobbling, that's what a concussion actually looks like. And so to spot it in wrestling, you have to be a real detective, because you got to tell when it's happening for real and when it's happening,
as part of the show.
As part of the show. Yeah.
Don't have to mention any names, but I'm curious about this. Have you had wrestlers, WWE superstars, that you find as the years were going that were texting you, hey Chris, I think I might have this, what do you think about this at all? Are they coming to you too, or athletes coming to you directly and just saying, I may not. What do you think I should do?
No, we actually just started the Concussion Legacy Foundation helpline because the volume is so much that I can't handle it. And now we invite anybody who's having problems to reach out, and we'll give you doctor referrals and education to help you get through it. But no, I mean, that's one of the things that when I give my lectures to the wrestlers, I always give out my cell phone and say, you have a problem, call me, because that's a fraternity to me. And they do. Luckily, it's not an overwhelming number, but there are people who can have problems down the road that might be attributed to some of the hits to the head they took, and I want to be there to help them get through it, because you can get to dark places with these injuries, and I was there, but I was able to push through it, and now I'm very happy that I make any permanent decisions, and sometimes people do, and we want to make sure people can get through and get better.
What you're doing is awesome. Do you miss anything about WWE and being in the ring, or?
Yeah, sure. I mean, actually, I was at the Royal Rumble on Sunday night in Houston.
What'd you think?
Yeah, I heard people saying best ever, and that was a hell of a show. That was a really well done show. The guys put on a great, and put on a great show. So yeah, I mean, when you go to something like that and you see the pop that Edge gets, and you're like, God, if I'd only put in 20 years, I could have got a pop like that. If I was any good. So it is one of the greatest. One of the greatest forms of entertainment out there, the energy, the crowd, the people. So, I'm still hoping to cure my post-concussion syndrome and make a comeback at some point. We'll see.
That would be so cool. And I got to ask you this about WrestleMania, because WrestleMania is going to be in Tampa, not far from here, actually, and all. Might you be there?
I hope so. I was at the last WrestleMania. I try to get to as many shows as I can.
Those things are so huge, Chris. Yeah. I mean, just that WrestleMania experience. Other than the Super Bowl, the NFL Super Bowl, I don't know, World Cup maybe. That's just unbelievable.
Well, the funny thing about when you think about the Super Bowl or the World Cup, like now they're trying to put on the show that WWE puts on, because their game might suck, But you're going to get a full show at wrestling every time, and all the bells and whistles and all the great storytelling in the videos, and so I would, if I could only go to one thing, I'd go to a wrestling show.
It's WrestleMania Tampa, yes! Yeah. And then lastly, Chris, Harvard grad, I'm curious, what did you study at Harvard? What was Plan B?
So I studied sociology as undergraduate, and I got initially into life sciences strategy consulting, which I found wasn't my passion. And
what was that? What, if I could ask you, what is that sort of about? I'm not familiar.
So we worked for pharmaceutical, biotech, medical device companies, helping them with their business. I love the projects where they'd say, we just bought a molecule, and we need to figure out how do we turn it into a drug, and what's the best business decisions to turn into a therapy for epilepsy or something. So that's how I actually got introduced to science.
And I was going to say, if it tied into any of this.
Yeah, no, I literally applied what I learned in the consulting firm to go to Harvard Medical School Library to learn about concussions. Like, nobody had applied, because there were no drugs for concussions. People hadn't really applied, search the whole literature, figure out where the holes are, and figure out what's going on. So I read every study on concussions as of 2006 when I wrote my book, Head Games. And then went back to school and got a Ph.D. in behavioral neuroscience. So,
Chris, I'm telling you what, and the brain that you have, it's just great you're able to share that and learn and take the knowledge and share that with everyone. Anywhere people can go to check up on what you're doing, or if they need help with something, website or something, where can they go?
More, you need help, concussionfoundation.org. That's our website. We have a helpline. We are here to serve you, and they help you if you're struggling, your loved one, and help make your kids safer in sports.
Thank you, Chris.
All right.